I've discussed in many videos about why Dune Part 3 will be an even harder movie to adapt than the first two, and one of the most difficult elements needing to be done right is Zendaya's Chani. After the end of Part 2, director Denis Villeneuve left her character in a different way to the book, as she was not on Paul's side. This got a lot of criticism, and fans of Herbert's work were left worrying about this going into the adaptation of Dune Messiah. But having seen what the director has pulled off with the first two installments, I think he will make this work, and I have ideas over how he might go about doing so. So in this video, I'm going to be discussing how Denis Villeneuve might go about adapting Chani for Dune Part 3. There will be big spoilers from the Dune Messiah book, so I would recommend not watching this video if you are someone who hasn't fully read Frank Herbert's novel. Before I get into it though, if you want to keep up to date on any of my content surrounding Dune Part 3 and beyond, then don't forget to support this upload by giving it a like, rating, and subscribing to the channel. But without further ado, let's dive into the character of Chani in Dune Part 3. So at the conclusion of Denis Villeneuve's Dune Part 2, the character of Chani is portrayed differently from her depiction in Frank Herbert's original novel. This shift has led fans to speculate that this evolution of her character may carry over in the forthcoming Dune Part 3, which is based on the book Dune Messiah. One notable aspect is the increasing sense of Chani's disillusionment and desire for independence. In Part 2, she becomes more cautious regarding Paul's ascension to power and his messianic identity, especially following his decision to marry Princess Irulan for political gain. This stands in contrast to the book, where Chani is depicted as a devoted supporter of Paul, even accepting his marriage as a necessary political arrangement. This alteration underscores the political perils of messianic leaders and highlights the complexities of Paul's anti-hero journey. Zendaya's portrayal of Chani reveals her loyalty to Paul on a personal level, yet her skepticism regarding his leadership and the emerging holy war is poised to have a significant impact in the forthcoming movie. There are speculations that she might serve as a voice of dissent among the Fremen, possibly challenging Paul's political and religious authority. But what has to be accounted for is Chani's eventual pregnancy and death. In the narrative of Dune Messiah, Chani becomes pregnant with Paul's twins, Leto II and Ganima, despite Irulan's efforts to interfere. Tragically, Chani dies during childbirth, an outcome that Paul foresaw and one that significantly influences the storyline. So it's clear that Dune Part 3 will address these critical events, particularly the emotional and political ramifications of Chani's loss. However, the changes made in Part 2 have led to concerns amongst fans regarding how Villeneuve will navigate towards this. Before getting into how the director might navigate all this, it further has to be noted that there are a lot of questions over what Denis is actually adapting with the film, now that it's titled Dune Part 3 and not just Dune Messiah. It's been speculated that the filmmaker could be going more into the next book, Children of Dune, and also the events that took place during the 12-year time skip before Messiah to make the film have a lot more weight. In discussing the children of Paul and Chani, it is important to note that they inherit certain distinctive abilities from the Atreides lineage, one of which is the ability to access ancestral memories. So fans essentially think that the children's roles in Dune Part 3 could be significant, especially with Leto II poised to represent the embodiment of the Golden Path. We learnt recently that actors Nakoa Wolf Momoa and Ida Brooke have been cast as the twins in Part 3, so there is a chance that Villeneuve tackles more than just a Messiah book. I have said in other videos that I personally don't think he's going into Children of Dune as deeply as people think he is, and I think casting the children is for some kind of flash forward or a final scene. Essentially, I do think he's keeping Children of Dune in mind when making decisions and showing us things related to that book, but I don't think he's going to include loads from it or a majority of that storyline. He's already said in interviews that he wanted to leave another filmmaker a lot of freedom for when they take on that project, and Messiah is his final adaptation. So when it comes to Children of Dune, I don't think that will be tackled to an extended degree. But what I do think has more potential, and this is where talking about the adaptation of Chani comes in, is that Villeneuve could utilise the 12-year time skip before Messiah to underline how she gets back to Paul's side. In coming to that, I think it's quite important to mention that as a massive Dune Messiah fan, I don't think Chani is the most explored character in that book. While she is a significant figure, her role often revolves around her pregnancy issues and her unwavering support for Paul. Chani's death serves as a crucial metaphor for Paul rather than a defining moment for her own character. Also, when confronted with the offer of a Gola of Chani by Scytale, Paul's refusal highlights his own complexities more than it sheds light on Chani herself. However, Villeneuve portrays Chani as a significantly more proactive character in his films, including the heightened tension she feels towards Paul by the end of Part 2. In Herbert's novel, the Fremen question Paul's leadership, influenced partly by his sporadic doubts about his identity as Muad'Dib, and also due to the challenges he and Chani face in producing an heir. In the opening of Dune Part 3, Chani, who has already expressed her opposition to Paul's ascension and the imminent holy war the Fremen will undertake in his name, may take on a more prominent role as a symbol of Fremen resistance. Rather than solely focusing on her struggles with motherhood, the narrative could shift to highlight Chani's disagreement with Paul's rule and the struggles they face initially. I think that this could primarily take place in the first act of the film, one that might potentially cover the 12-year jump that isn't in Messiah's book. During the 12 years, significant events unfold, particularly the Holy War led by Paul, and this conflict results in the deaths of an estimated 61 billion people, a staggering figure attributed to the jihad he incites after ascending to the role of emperor. Although Paul does not engage directly in action, his position as a religious figure and his ability to foresee future events contribute to the initiation of the jihad and the catastrophic outcomes that follow. At the conclusion of Part 2, Chani firmly opposes the war and departs on a sandworm. So I think that there's a good chance that Chani will start the movie being away from Paul, and I think the adaptation of the time leading into Messiah is a way to detail how she goes from being a voice against him into being with him again and eventually having children. The bigger question, I guess, is how that actually all happens. Coming to that, I think there are two choices that Denis may look at regarding the adaptation of Chani. The first is linked to what I was just saying about Chani starting her journey away from Paul, and it's based on her anger following the conclusion of Part 2. It would involve her gradual transition back to Paul by the time we get to Messiah's events at the end of the first act. To me, this scenario appears to be the most plausible, as at the end of the previous film, Chani departs not merely due to Paul's political marriage to Irulan, but rather because he is betraying every promise he made to her. This happens when he consumes the water of life, causing him to fundamentally change. In the Messiah book, set 12 years after Paul takes the title of Emperor, the galaxy is engulfed in genocide under his regime. The extent of this conflict has escalated to such a degree that even Paul finds himself unable to intervene with the Fremen effectively. He finds comfort only in his relationship with Chani, whose life he fears may be at risk during childbirth as she bears his heir. Complicating matters, Chani has struggled with infertility, a situation increased by Princess Irulan administering contraceptives, as she is motivated to ensure she herself becomes the mother of the next Atreides descendant. Chani was skeptical of the Lisan al-Gaib prophecy and had differing views on various aspects of the Fremen religion. Given her struggles with Paul's ascension as a messianic figure among the Fremen, I think it's likely that when she leaves at the end of Part 2, she chooses to seek refuge in the Southern Siege. This choice may have been influenced by the destruction of the Northern Siege by Fade Rotha, as well as her desire to distance herself from Paul's direct influence. While Paul has followers in the south, this location allows her to maintain a degree of independence from his leadership. Her decision to depart on a sandworm stems from profound emotional turmoil, and the sense of betrayal she experienced due to Paul's actions constitutes a significant emotional climax in the conclusion of Part 2. Now, it's important to mention that Paul said himself in Part 2 that she will come back to his side as he has seen it. This was after taking the water of life, so I think it's safe to assume that this will happen and something will result in them coming back together, most likely during the 12 years before Messiah's main events. My current prediction is that while Chani is distanced from Paul and in the Fremen Siege, she will see how Fremen in this siege have changed their opinion on Paul in the years leading into Messiah. Essentially, how it goes from being full support for him into some for and against Paul's reign following the ramifications of the jihad. I think that this particular siege will eventually become the camp from Messiah where Opheim is killed by the villain Scytale. And with Othine being a loyal supporter of Paul and Chani seeing the conspiracy against Paul play out in real time, it will make her realise that the person she loves is now in danger and there is worse out there. Now, for all this to work, I think Denis will have to have this scene play out earlier in the timeline. He'd have to have this happen a bit earlier than it does in the Messiah book, show Chani coming back in contact with Paul, have their relationship build, and then have Chani be pregnant afterwards too. There's a lot to get them back together and make the audience really buy into that. But by doing it during the 12-year time skip and giving Chani a more important role in that, you're giving them a decent reason and enough time to reconnect. Of course, it won't be right at the start of the 12 years because you've also got the problem of Anya Taylor-Joy's Aaliyah to adapt, and she's a big part of the narrative too. So I think it would be towards the end of whatever length of time they do cover before the events of Dune Messiah in the new film. Something to note is that Paul is aware that the face dancer Scytale is masquerading as Othine's daughter and that he is involved in a conspiracy against him. Despite recognising the inherent risks of this situation, which include facing a face dancer and a plot against his life, Paul chooses to allow events to progress as he has foreseen. So Chani could come to him once she knows of the conspiracy, and Paul would be able to navigate that and start to reconnect with her. That's my main prediction for how Chani might start talking to Paul again, and while she still won't 100% agree with his actions, deep down she does love and care for him, and she understands that what the conspirators are doing may result in the Fremen, including Paul, being killed. Coming to the other route that Denis might take, this involves a prediction that I've seen a few people mention, and while it does seem quite unlikely, I do quite like it. And that is the reworking of Baby Leto from the original book into the 12 years between Dune and Dune Messiah. Basically, there's this theory going around that Chani is already pregnant, and this could be with Leto that originally dies in the first Dune book. Denis cut this, and when Fade attacked the Fremen Siege in Dune Part 2, there was no Baby Leto around. So maybe he decides to use the 12-year time skip, or however long it is, to tackle Chani being pregnant and the death of that first child. He might be killed by the conspiracy, forcing Chani to return to Paul for protection and setting up the whole pregnancy plot with Arulan and the rest of Messiah's storyline. I do like the theory, but I think it will involve too much to handle in one movie, having Chani go through pregnancy, her child be killed, and then go back through pregnancy again. For me, a more effective approach would be to emphasise Paul's concern regarding the need for an heir. This angle illustrates his desire to distance himself from Arulan due to her connections with the Bene Gesserit. Consequently, he seeks out Chani himself as a means to reconnect. It sounds simple, but sometimes the simplest answers are the most effective dramatically on screen. You can still have a focus on Chani being against what Paul has done, yet show that she cares for him and that their love ultimately prevails. So as a whole, while I like that idea, I think the first option in showing the end of the 12-year jump with Chani being in the Fremen camp is the more likely option. I think it's a way to put an even bigger focus on the Fremen disputes surrounding Paul, which is a big focus of Messiah's plot. And in doing so, you can chart a journey for Chani that explains how she gets back with Paul during the events of the Messiah book. There will have to be brief structural changes and approaches to the timeline to make this all work, but it won't fundamentally change Messiah when thinking about how that book ends up. But that was my video discussing how Denis Villeneuve could adapt Chani in Dune Part 3. We'll have to see how the director approaches his final Dune film, but in thinking about some of the iconic moments, characters and plot points, I think he can make a brilliant conclusion to his adaptation. Yes, it will definitely be a hard task, but like with Part 1 and 2, he proved that it can be done, adapting a novel known as once being unfilmable into a sci-fi classic. Let me know down below in the comment section what you are personally excited for surrounding Dune Part 3, alongside how you think Denis Villeneuve will go about adapting the project and the character of Chani. For much more videos and news on Denis Villeneuve's Dune universe, then subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Also, if you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like, rating, and follow me on social media via the links in the description. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I've been Cortex, and as always, make some noise.